for the next session, Dr. Mohan Rajan sir, Dr. Partha Biswas, Dr. Himanshu Mehta sir, we would like you to stay over please. Dr. Ajay Paul, Dr. Sandeep Navekar, Dr. Sri Ganesh, and Dr. Arirudh Maiti will be the expert panel. Dr. Vidya will be moderating with me for this session. And for the ARC panel, we'll have Dr. Rohit Saxena, Dr. Harshul Tak, Dr. Srinivas Joshi, and Dr. Anaga Harur. The three presentations will be one by Dr. Kaushik Murli, Dr. Chitra Ramamurthy, and Dr. Vidya. Dr. Kaushik Murli. Dr. Kaushik Murli, are you here? Dr. Kaushik Murli is here. And he's one of the directors for I Foundation.
I would want the audience to be quiet because we need to go on to more learning, please.
In between sessions, a little break, सांस लेने का time. This has been going non-stop for 3 hours now. So Dr. Kaushik Murli will be speaking on how do I develop communication skills of my employees. How do I develop my communication skills? Now it's moved on to how do I develop communication skills of my employees. Dr. Kaushik, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satyajit. I think thank you to the ARC panel for inviting me for this session here today. So I'm here to share a few pearls in terms of what you would have realized very quickly all through the day is that as an individual doctor, however brilliant a surgeon you are, you cannot run a practice. You're dependent on a team of people, right from your salesperson to opticals to many things, and over you had this discussion of how important it is for you to be transparent, how you need to talk, how you need to counsel. So the critical aspect of whatever you do is how are you going to communicate to various people. So I'm here to share a little bit from what we've been managing. So we start off with a little poll. I think you've been hearing a lot all morning. So I would encourage those of you in the audience to kind of take a poll. So it's very clear, it's 3 truths and a lie. So how many of you think that the first statement, good communication helps improve patient perception about healthcare facility, is the truth? Just a show of hands, please. The second one, 80% of serious medical errors are due to communication failure. Truth? Great. Communication with the doctor is the only deciding factor for patient satisfaction. Okay, there's one brave lady at the back who's got her hands all the way up. And effective communication contributes to job satisfaction. So yeah, so the votes are pretty clear in the way the hands went up. The third statement is definitely a lie. But nonetheless, you see how critical good communication is. And again, when you're in an organization, whether you're a small setup or a large facility, when you talk of communication, it's at multiple levels. Invariably, we only talk of the doctor-patient communication or the counselor-patient communication. But we forget there are informal interactions, chit-chats that happen over coffee, chit-chats that happen over the water cooler, patients talking to each other, sitting next to each other. There are updates that happen. You heard about metrics being presented, strategy planning being done. So all of this requires you to be able to not only have that plan on place, but communicate to the rest of your team and audience what is it that you have in mind. Otherwise, it's a Chinese whisper. You have something, they understand 50%, they implement 50% of that. And most of you are going to end up leading an organization if you're already not doing that. So you need to be able to stand up on a podium like this and do what is called as leadership communication. So what is it that you are able to do in terms of building that capability when you're building your pipeline? Hospitals are very unique. We all think we do everything perfectly right. And all our staff think that they're communicating brilliantly. So none of them will ever come up to you and say, sir, I don't know how to communicate, or madam, I don't know how to communicate. So the key reasons that this happens is because of three things. First and foremost, they don't know that they are ineffective. So they are very happy in the space they are. There is a lack of social awareness or an emotional intelligence. They come from probably a very patriarchal setup where the woman has to listen to them and they are not going to talk in any different way. They're going to be extremely condescending to women patients or women colleagues. So you need to acknowledge that and train them and make them aware about that. The second point is they often get frustrated saying that how much more should I tell you? So typically, I think ma'am spoke about 21 meetings to do a sale. Imagine a patient coming into your room again and again asking the same questions. You get quite often very frustrated saying that what more do you want me to say or how differently. And the last bit is sitting in Bangalore. We are a cosmopolitan crowd. A lot of us junior staff are from the rural communities around. Their primary language of communication they're confident in is Kannada. And we have patients who speak Hindi, Bengali, English, who've written from US, multinational company who are coming and talking, and they're not going to have that confidence. So we need to be very clear that these three categories are reality in our setups and we need to work at it. What is it that we can teach them? So this session is more about that. The first step is please teach them how to listen. Again, this is a mnemonic that I pulled off from the HBR. It stands for first and foremost, make sure that they are listening with minimal distractions. Current world today, probably 30% of you are on WhatsApp, 20% of you are seeing your friends for the first time after 2 years. You're trying to catch up with them. Most of you are probably not listening to me. But what ma'am did at the beginning was saying, all of you please keep quiet and listen. That's the best way to do it, where you're cutting out distractions and ensuring that there is some audience to what is being happening. The second, keep clarifying, ask for more and more information. Most of the time, sitting at doctors, there is an asymmetry in the information we have, and we try to tell people what we want them to know. So be clear that your understanding details are not overlooked. It is always good to paraphrase, summarize, and talk back to the patient or to your employee so that they are clear that you have understood what they want to convey. It also brings in confidence to them that you have understood what they're trying to communicate. So that's a very great tool of kind of summarizing and reiterating. I think what the panel has been doing at the end of every talk is pretty much that. So that summary helps in people understanding and keeps people on track, making sure that the core message is got through to the audience. You have to try to understand. Whatever training you do, you cannot be fake about it. They have to be empathetic. They have to listen. And this is a habit because most often we are listening to give an answer. So when there is a patient who is talking to you, in your mind you've already framed what you want to respond to him. Don't do that. Pause for a second, try and understand where they're coming from, understand the context, and then try and respond. Last bit is empathy is very, very critical. It is not just important for you to listen, but to be a part of the process. So the eye contact that you have is very critical. Some of you are looking at me, that's great. So I know that you empathize that I've come here early in the morning, traveling and listening. That does help. Some of you are nodding your head vehemently saying, yes, yes, this does make sense. So those little gestures that you teach your staff to do will go a very long way in the patient being felt cared for. And the last bit is do not give advice when you're listening. People do come up to us, share thoughts because they want a vent. They just want you to be a sounding board. They will figure out the solution 90% of the time. Always hesitate. The intention is to hear and understand rather than to give advice. I'll just play this little video. This is from the Big Bang Theory. Those of you who are fans of it. This is a small clip, about 2 minutes. It again wavers between two extremes. So here you have a scientist trying to sell a neurologist something very exciting about technology. I'm hoping that the audio works. Oops.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true, but the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes! Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
End of it, she probably was not completely honest, but you could see the shift in his excitement the minute he saw her listen to him. And that's something I think is a very neat tool that we need to teach our staff when they're communicating. The second part, most people are not erudite speakers, but again, this is research that has been done way back in 71 that shows that only 7% of the words that you actually speak matter. Most of it pertains to facial expression, most of it pertains to body language. So again, if you notice Dr. Shreya speak, he had this mannerism where he was moving his hands a lot, and it was almost as though he was holding a box in his hand. So that actually gives you imagine you're holding a basketball in your hand and talking. That is the best way for you to stand and deliver a talk, because that shows that you're being very trustful, you're very open about it, you're receiving ideas, rather than you standing like this as though you're preaching to the world. So be very aware about body language, teach your staff again how to do that. These little tricks do go a very, very long way. Eye contact, the tone of voice, hand gestures, nodding, facial expressions, personal distance. Today we are in a Me Too world. You want the patient to be comfortable. Ma'am spoke about putting a hand on her shoulder. Again, you have to be conscious about the social context. You can't just go hugging people randomly. People are going to mistake you. And leaning into people, showing that you're interested, again, helps a lot. So listening and the way you talk is very, very critical. Again, when they have listened and they're going to next do the question, it is always important for them to ask open-ended questions. So rather than asking a very direct question saying, was COVID a difficult time, where you're going to say yes and no, it is very easy to say what is bothering you. That kind of opens out what is actually running in their mind, and you as a leader can actually work and help them. And the same thing works with our patient. Invariably, we ask them, do you want cataract surgery or do you want to see better? And that's it. It's a very transaction. But if we ask them, what is your problem or why have you come here? That kind of opens out why they've actually landed up here. The last bit, you've listened to them, you've spoken to them, you need to write. Sir spoke of 4% to a TPA. There are many emails that go out, and most of our staff are going to be sending emails to us. One simple thing that you can teach them that they can implement from tomorrow is ask them to put a good subject line. Invariably, they write so much of story that the context gets completely lost. A 1 or 2 word topic helps it stand out. Again, when they're representing the hospital, they have to be very clear in terms of the syntax. They have to have a salutation, a dear, close with sincerely, use business language, avoid all caps. So there is a tendency to use bold. It is equivalent of you standing and screaming at people. So teach them those little etiquettes. Jokes and sarcasms are not great. We have team members who are not happy. Probably the last incentive pissed off 2 people. Let them not go onto an email and do it. Email is good when there is no other way. You want to create a paper trail. Otherwise, it's much easier for you to just get up and talk. And in the world of WhatsApp, you as doctors never forward a forward. That is, I think, a rule that we need to set up. Otherwise, we're just adding to the misinformation. In conclusion, when you're teaching conversation, explain to your staff that you're trying to enable them to understand what the other person is communicating. That is not just the words that are coming out, but the body language, their tone, their emotions. And they need to convey interest, engage, and care for the other person. Once again, thank you so much for having me here.
Sheikh, there is one question which I would have with you, and maybe anything else which you all would like to add from the expert panel. Now, you say you're talking about, of course, you're training the staff, but is it just a one-time process, or how do you keep going about, do you have some kind of a review meetings, or how do you plan that the communication skills is constantly maintained in your lot? Because there is going to be attrition, you're losing out on some, and there could be a time when the things are not going good and you're not aware of it sitting inside. How do you do that?
Ma'am, I think there was again a talk about the process in the person. So you need to have a process in place. So to some extent, you need to have some reminders that can help the staff communicate better. So we have kind of put together some kind of a simple chart that gives them some of these cues of saying that, have you asked the patient to sit down? Are you looking at them? Are you not distracted? Make sure that you've closed the door and stuff like that. So that kind of helps, and that makes it independent of the person. Even otherwise, you have to have continuous training. There is nothing that beats training. This has to be done periodically, and it has to be done probably by different people, because sometimes it gets very boring to hear the same person come and deliver the same talk. Invariably, patients and their attendants are probably the best teachers. If they're not going to be happy with the way your staff is communicated today, they're not going to sit quiet and listen to them. They're going to give them a piece of their mind, and the staff will very quickly learn. So they'll come up to you and say, this patient is being unreasonable, the attender is screaming at him. So that becomes a good start point for understanding what has happened and kind of train them back on that.
Do you plan to say that you will have a focus group of discussion on and off regarding the points?
Ma'am, so it's different cadres require different communication capability. So the counselors require a very different skill set. Your registration staff or your telephone operator requires a different skill set. So it's better to group them separately and have a very focused training on what task they're supposed to, at the end of the day, deliver.
Great.
So that kind of makes it more efficient and easier to monitor also.
Thank you very much. So I would like to invite Dr. Chitra Amurthy to talk about understanding the needs. What more can I do to enhance satisfaction and motivation among my employees?
I must tell over here that Dr. Chitraram Amurthy over the past 2-3 years, especially during COVID times, has worked extremely hard arranging all these webinars and so many scientific sessions. COVID could not defeat her in her mission to bring science to all the members of All India Ophthalmic Society. Thank you so much, ma'am, for all your efforts.
Thanks. नहीं, इसको एक ओपन करना है ना. इतना छोटा क्यों कर दिए आप? कुछ दिख ही नहीं रहा है. A very good thanks, Dr. Satyajit and Vidya, for holding the stage, and very good morning to one and all of you. I think you all by now would have got bored of the messages which keeps hitting your inbox or your WhatsApp groups, how I have been rallying to ensure that I have you sitting here in this hall, and this is our best way of transferring some kind of leadership skill. I'm sure by the end of the day you might get bored, you might find it toxic, but I'm sure there would have been something different you would have learned aside of ophthalmology. So please stay glued to your seats aside the short lunch breaks. Don't disappear, because seeing a full audience would give incentive to talk better for all the speakers who are going to come following me. So my due in the next few minutes is to talk on understanding the needs. What more can I do to enhance satisfaction and motivation amongst my employees? Now, I hope this is something which is not taken lightly at all. I think it should be a moment where we all do some introspection in the next 10 minutes, that what is the need for a stable work environment with minimum attrition of employees? What are you going to do to increase the sense of belonging of your employees with you? How are you going to realize and appreciate that your growth is so connected to the stable work environment? And also to realize that employee satisfaction should actually be the mantra of your organization if you want to go forward. To my mind, it is a priority of an organization which has a futuristic goal. Now, the next definition you are going to ask me is, what is job satisfaction? It is something so individual, so personal, an assessment of work experience and environment by that employee, which has quantity, which has quality. But it's a very individual response, and rather emotion-based response on the positives and the negatives which he gets from working or in that particular job experience. In other words, it is a very cumulative response. And this employee, let's remember, has an everlasting memory wherein he's going to remember all those happy moments he shared with you and all those not so happy moments. And it is going to be permanently there in his memory folder. And that is a huge challenge for you as his employer, which means that as an employer, your role is a very tough one, because at one end of the spectrum, you have the challenge of growth, you have your future goals to be sought and achieved, and in tandem with that kind of surrounding competition and that evolving technology which is going to be discussed over the next 4 days, there is the basic existential need to keep your flock together. And how are you going to do that? Now let's discuss this policy of this one industry, this health industry, with any other industry, because it's all a parallel policy everywhere. And the industrial psychology describes it as two theories, the Herzberg's theory and the Maslow's theory. And what do you understand from these parallels? Now Maslow's hierarchy theory, it tells us that the employee is developing a sense of esteem, developing a sense of belonging, a safety, and a psychologically sound response, but that is not motivation. The motivation comes when there is a self-actualization wherein he feels that he is needed in that organization. A similar understanding comes from Hirschberg's theory, where he says that it's not just the salary, it's not just the working condition, it's not just the workspace, it's not just the relationship that employee has with his colleagues or what he relates to the supervisor or the quality of supervisor, but the motivating facts are how his performance and achievement is being judged, how is he being recognized, what is his job status, is there going to be a growth, does he have an extra responsibility in the growth of the organization, is there going to be opportunities for him to advance, is there going to be a personal growth and growth in the work itself. So in fact, I feel it's a win-win situation, and I think the next few minutes I'm going to tell us how we have to win it. At one end of the spectrum, the employer has to understand that he benefits from satisfied employees. There is profitability because there is less of staff turnovers. If they are happy, they would rather stay with you and go and somewhere else. Believe me, with job satisfaction, there is a higher productivity which takes your organization to a higher level. And hand in glove, let's understand the employee also has an happiness quotient in it, because there's a stability for him, there's a permanency for him, he's happy in your organization. So this kind of advantage, this kind of a positive approach comes, and he is definitely going to give better quality at better quantifiable time to the organization if he has his job satisfaction. Now this very basic question is going to reverberate and ricochet back to you again. Now why is enhancing that employee satisfaction and motivation, why is it so integral? Because that means job retention. It's about holding back your dear lot, because they are going to contribute to an undisturbed workforce in your system, and then gradually they start dreaming your dream. You had a dream when you started this organization, and you want your whole team to dream that dream with you, so that together you dream that dream. Because to get to that dream, there is an enormous amount of work you have, lot of hard work, lot of late hours. And if all your employees are happy with you and they join in to work with you as this wonderful team I have, then they are ready to tread that difficult terrain of hard work, those troughs, those peaks, which you need to make yourself a strong team. This was a group photograph we took about 15, 18 years back. I don't even know whether we had actual realization of what leadership meant. But believe me, I realize today that our team is a far, far bigger team than what some group of us stood. But many of those people in that group are still with us, because probably unknowingly we had realized that only team building would be a core to realize your dreams. Because when multiple hands are raised, which raise you to a higher level, we are all dreaming together in unison. Let's not forget that when you're losing your employee, there is a lot of costs which are involved, hiring and retraining, the heartaches, the wasted discussions you've had with that employee to retain him, and the regrets. Sometimes you wonder whether you did the right thing by sending him off. So all those things add up, and it's such a wasteful moment. So which could all be avoided if you think of providing job satisfaction to your employee and keep that as your primary goal. So then, let's go further. When we say that each industry sets a goal which is proportionate to customer satisfaction. So in other words, if you have happy employees, you have built a platform wherein they bring in their own levels of creativity and productivity to bring in that happiness quotient, which brings in customer satisfaction, which is what for other industries, and for you, it is your patient satisfaction. So job satisfaction, friends, is just not talk about mere stability. It means a whole lot of things. It means, are you giving your employee good work surrounds? Are you ensuring that there is a growth potential for him? Does he have incentives and rewards, which Shreyash Ramurthy spoke so beautifully about? Is there an appreciation of work? It need not be done all the times, but time and again, without necessarily monetary terms, if you are able to recognize him, he feels a sense of increased self-esteem, a sense of belonging. I would call it a family feel. If that kind of feeling you are able to inculcate in your employees, beyond that basic emotional level, you are getting there. So friends, are you ready to grow? Are you ready to seek that horizon? Are you ready with me to make that impossible possible, to ensure that you do not lose any of your employees? And it all comes a full circle that if you give job satisfaction to your employee in every possible way, you are actually going somewhere, which also means it's a very tough road for you to walk. So then, let's also understand that retention of good people at all levels is pretty challenging with the increased volume which you keep getting into your organization as your organization grows and becomes successful. And we also need to view the market economy and the turbulence in the employment situations. You also need to know that as your employees become senior, the salary increment comes, and therein comes its own challenges of economic stability. But there is a constant change. We have to be realistic about the fact that you might lose out some of those employees, some of them, but you try your best to harness as many of them. I believe the whole story of job satisfaction or understanding the needs of your employees is like bringing up your own family, your children, which has been a roller coaster ride for all of us here along the way. And it's how did you keep your family together through their highs and lows? And that's it, by providing them some reasonable benefits, reasonable working hours, a sense of camaraderie, and a very deep empathy which should be there for their basic existential needs. You need to have time to hear them out at some point of time. And you also need to remember that you have to consider not their present needs, but their future needs, their monetary stability, because if you give them an insurance for a financial stable future, why would an employee want to leave you and go? So then you need to ask yourself, are you ready to promise them this and promise them a lot more? Are you going to enhance their ambitions too, all along with yours, not just your ambition along the way? Are you going to ensure that they are fairly de-stressed within their reasonable work times? Are you going to be with them along the way? For that, certain metrics are involved. You need to measure job values. You should have a very strong internal assessment module. You should have designed and maintained a pay structure which is ahead of your surrounding competition. You should have a way to incentivize a salary structure so that they realize that they are also working for it. You should pay for their performances, their competence, their skill, incentives, intense incentives with emotional support. You have to ensure there's a leave policy. There has to be a wellness program. There has to be staff engagement programs, and you have to celebrate some moments together. Now, what are the common reasons for employee dissatisfaction? All that I told you, the opposite of it. Low compensation, lack of career growth, poor relationship with the colleagues, lack of appreciation, and poor work balance. And you need to become a motivational leader to enhance the satisfaction. And for that, you need to create a very positive work atmosphere with a profound leadership. You are going to be the leader. You have to go to keep your team together. You have to create that kind of a work culture where your moral values are retained, because that employee of yours is constantly judging you, is constantly trying to understand you whether you're being ethical. So if you have a very transparent and an inspiring leadership style, which is regulating the internal behavior and also keeping the internal communication on. Now, what is this internal communication? Believe me, that has a great impact on the workforce environment. You need to constantly work upon it. It is not a one-time agenda. You have to constantly upgrade your employees on what are your growth plans, what are you doing for the organization's growth, how are you going to have all your employees participating at various levels in your organization. That means you should also master the trick of getting feedbacks from them, giving feedbacks for them. And believe me, there has to be a lot of trust, lot of employee satisfaction, and lot of motivation there. And it has to be a very healthy feedback which you take and give. It should have a constant positive approach to it. It has to be constructive. You do not call an employee to your room and point out all the negatives about him. You point out all the positive about him and tell him how you could add some more to make him an even positive person. So you have to have rewards and recognitions along the way. This was a driver who worked with us for 25 years, and then we called them all into an auditorium and recognized him, and there were some few speeches and how people experienced him as a great driver. I believe that would have an immense, tremendous psychological impact on that employee of yours, and it makes the other employees in the organization also believe that if they stay on that long with you, there is a future. You could have different ways of rewarding best performance of the month. You should also look at giving a great work-life balance. Believe me, they are all young people with you, with wives who are not ready to do all the kind of work which we did in our generation. So they have to work at home and they have to work in the office. So if you give them reasonable working hours, not too tight, keeping in mind that he needs to go back to a happy home to be happy working with you, that would be a better way. You should also have one-to-one interaction with your employees. It may not be on a day-to-day basis, but you should have a mental chart that at some point of time you have talked to all of these employees and you have got to know how they are thinking about your the whole team spirit or the sense of belonging or their future directions. So believe me, if you have your team working with you fully involved, you hear them, you're with them, you're along with them, you're definitely going places. You should have monthly HOD meetings where you thrash out all the positives and negatives, all those key indicator points from top to bottom, from the bathroom being dirty to the optical outlet being clean to everything, to the surgical volumes going up. Believe me, that would have an impact. You need to develop your employee skills. You get new machinery. You should ensure there's a training module which is there for your employees to learn. They should feel year on that they have learned something more from the organization and there is a greater sense of belonging, and they go. And look at this. These are different kind of sessions which we've had. I'm just taking an example. We are no model organization, but I had to give you some pictographic memories. Like one was a food committee meeting and one was a hospital infection control meeting, like different meetings which gets the simple person to a senior person sitting together across the table and getting involved, having surveys, having suggestion box, having one-to-one reviews. You should have corporate wellness programs. You should have fitness center if you could add on. You should do something for infants or children, for those young mothers working with you. Every bit of it would be impactful, believe me, friends. Let's understand that employees don't work only for a paycheck. Their work satisfaction needs direction, needs a sense of purpose, and you have to make the difference, because only as an employer can you facilitate it. So what I would like to conclude saying is, be that kind of winner that you want to be in life. For that, you need to be with your employees, you need to be for them, you need to be along with them. And I think if you've understood that, I'm sure all of us would do a great job in understanding our employees' needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful presentation. I'd like you to request you to share a few thoughts. All your presentation is on what we should do for the employee. But before I come to the expert panel and to begin with Dr. Ajay Paul, would you like to share some mantra when we are hiring somebody of how we should assess somebody of whether he will be good for the organization or not? It's very difficult because once some period passes off, then only we realize whether it's positive or negative. Is there some mantra during hiring?
Yeah, I think that's a very difficult. We should actually have probably not just one interview time. Probably there should be 2, 3 interviews, and you should have different colleagues of yours interviewing them at different levels, so that there could be some kind of an information which comes across. But all of us have made mistakes. You do take on somebody, pay them much higher salary than the other guys who are working at his caliber with you, and that sort of brings in a kind of unrest amongst the other employees
Disparity.
because you've made a misjudgment. Those mistakes happen.
Dr. Ajay Paul, please.
Yeah, a different mantra for hiring a fresher versus somebody who is switching from another institute. Normally, when a person comes from another institute, he has worked for 4-5 years and then wants to come to us. Normally, I would or my team would ask why you want to leave that. What was your problem? And then we would normally ask them to be with us for a session 1 day or 2 day and then observe him before actually jumping to him, because that's what she said. Now you are getting him something at par with somebody who is a senior. You think that he has got this expertise and all, but other than knowing expertise is, as he said, what is the attitude? What is his attitude with colleagues? Because if he's going to jump the rank and be equal to somebody, it's very important, because we have had our bad times and good times.
Dr. Sri Ganesh, you hire a lot of people. What is your mantra when you are hiring people?
We always ask for references, especially from the previous employers. We look at their performance in the other organization, why they left, and what was lacking in that organization, what they see in our organization, what is their, what are the milestones, what are for personal growth in this organization, what are their expectations, and what they can deliver to the organization. And we always take them on a probation period. So usually it's about 6 months, and we tell them that we will assess your work and how you're able to cope with the
Probation is the
organization,
key
and
word.
then either we can confirm your employment, or so this is so that you always have that leeway that after by 6 months, if they're not able to perform or they're not able to do well, then you can always give them a golden handshake.
Dr. Sandeep, would you want to add something before we go on to our next speaker?
Yeah, no, just the same thing, whatever these two gentlemen said. I'm always, I'm never shy of calling the previous organization. Many of them are our own competitors, and sometimes we feel awkward to call them. But I think we are all ophthalmic professionals, we are colleagues, and we do understand that people do leave our organization for better, better incentives and better things. So no harm in calling them up. Sometimes we may get a biased review of those individuals. Sometimes that previous employer is unhappy to let this man go. He may even give you a bad review. But I think we should keep all these things open, and as Sri Ganesh said, keep them for a probation period. At our place, it's about normally 3 or 4 months, and we can assess how these people mingle with the other people in our organization, and we can understand the potential of these people in that period of time.
Himanshu sir, a quick view, sir.
It's a very tough thing for a new employee to be joining in. A new guy is always full of enthusiasm. He will imbibe the vibes of the older people there, and he'll be suppressed. So you will see the colors in the short time, within 3 months. So probation period would be ideal. Employee switching times would be because whether he's a cribber or not, as Sandeep said, we might want to check the credentials, whether he's a cribber or he's really bad at work, why he was thrown out or whatever reason. So it's personal. It's a bet you have to take. There is not much that you can do. It's a toss of coin. You try your best, but you have a probation time wherein you can settle your score.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to the next topic by Dr. Vidya, who will be speaking on understanding the needs. What more can I do to enhance satisfaction among patients? Dr. Vidya, please.
Very good afternoon. I shall be talking to you on how do I enhance my patient satisfaction. A very simple answer would be, it's not. Okay, thanks. A very simple, straightforward answer would be to understand and address the needs of the patient and the expectation of the patient. So now, what do we mean by patient expectation? It is just that anticipation or belief about what is to be encountered in the consultation or in the healthcare. In simple terms, it is the mental picture that the patient carries when he walks into the hospital. What is not is it is not restricted only to the clinical outcomes. This is where we go wrong. And it is about the overall picture and overall experience that he encounters from the moment he walks in to the moment he leaves the hospital. So am I trying to say that there is a disparity in our perception and the patient's expectation? Yes, it seems to be so. Because we as clinicians, we as healthcare providers, we are always talking about the technical quality. See, next 4 or 5 days, we are going to be spending our time on upgrading our technical knowledge. We are going back and we are going to upgrade our technology skills, and we are going to be assessing our skills, and we are trying to provide the best possible outcomes to our patients, which we are not sharing with our patients. The details and whatever we are doing, we are not going to be sharing with our patients. And even if I share, my patient is not going to understand the intricacies of the details that I'm talking about. But what he is worried or what she is worried about is the process that he gets the outcome. The final outcome is very important for him. The process of getting the final outcome is what matters to him. But that is where we are neglecting or we are ignoring the healthcare thing. So to give you this concept, we are providing a lot of things, like look at this square. This is what we provide to our patient. But the patient walks in, he comes with this circle. This is what he wants. Look at this area of intersection. This is what the patient wanted, and we also provided. So only we increase this area of intersection, then we have more satisfied patients, and that is what we need to do. So why should we understand? Because that is when we can improve our outcomes. That is where we can ensure compliance with the patient, and that is where we can enhance their satisfaction, and that is where we can also decrease the liability. And when we do all these things, that is where we can actually experience growth and development as an individual and also as an organization. In the world of business, this is what the customer service is all about. It is about 86% of the customers, they say they would want to pay more for the better patient care or better experience. 70% of the experience is based on how the customer feels like they are being treated. And 89% of consumers do not mind shifting to a competitor after a very bad customer experience. And about 92% trust only the recommendation from family and friends. It's not the other forms of advertising. And look at this. This is very important. A 5% increase in customer retention is going to increase your revenue by about 95%. So customer service is definitely a very great competitive advantage. And there are definitely downsides to unmet expectation. It can range from disappointment to anger. Many patients may not complain, but they may not return to hospital also. That can result in poor compliance and also suboptimal outcomes. And 70% is again resulting to miscommunication, this thing. And we should remember the days of absolute trust are already over. And what actually determines this expectation? Whenever a patient comes in, his expectation is basically based on his understanding of the illness. So we are now in the Google times. Patients do come up with a list of provisional diagnoses. They also want to discuss about all the possible things. So we need to remember that. And even the expectation is based on cultural background, his health beliefs, attitudes, and also the level of understanding. And the price that we are paying for having a dissatisfied patient is really high. So we need to spend quality time in understanding this issue and addressing this. General expectations are that they also want to be listened to. My previous speaker talked wonderfully about this communication skill. And they also want to have a clear explanation and instruction about what their condition is. They also want to be treated by patients, by staff members who are professional in their work, who can also show care, concern, and compassion to their needs. There are definitely unrealistic expectations from the patient side, like they want to discuss several problems all in one go. Some of these patients may also want just a prescription without even a consultation. And these days of increased connectivity, they also want to stay with you connected all the time, 24/7. They want your attention. And sometimes when they walk in, they think that you know all the answers to their problems, and they just want you to give one magical cure that can fix up all the problems, which may not be possible sometimes. A shrewd physician would definitely know how to avoid manipulation with these unnecessary demands. That says without going that we need to have enhanced communication skills And we need to be like patient enough to explain our complex decision making process in simple terms to the patient, avoiding the medical jargons. That is what we need to do. Sadly, some of these technological innovations have taken our attention from patient experience to more of technology oriented thing. That is something that is missing in the patient care link these days. And as a healthcare manager and policy makers, I really want to emphasize this point that we need to provide great patient experience for them to have satisfaction. So what should be our action plan? One is we need to shift our focus from supply chain to value chain. So what is the supply chain that means? So we are always spending our time in improving our technology, our operational facility. We want to provide the best possible drugs or best possible optical things that is available. And we also want to have a trained professional with us. These are all supply chains. But what we need to do is that we need to create value in each and every point of contact with our patient. That is, it should communicate like pre-service, point of service, and also in the post-service. That is where we can actually make a difference. So the approaches are two. One is a value-based system. The other one is a patient-centered care. Dr. Arvind talked about patient care centered care, which is gaining more importance these days. That is, we are consciously adopting the patient's perceptions into our process. We mainstream into all our process and in the related systems. So it is more of a customized patient care. But what is the requirement is that we need to be more open, flexible, and also respectful when we make these decisions. So that when we do this, our patients do not lose their identity. They do not become one of the cases. They think that they are receiving the best possible care that they could. How can we do this? One is a coordinated and integrated care. One of the previous speaker in the morning also mentioned about the integrated care. Thing is that why do patients worry about their waiting time in the hospital when they do not bother about waiting in a mall or in several other places? Because when they walk into the hospital, they feel vulnerable. They want to have that connect with the physician, not just with the physician, it is from the front line to the support staff. They need to make that connection. So we need to improvise our process flow with this objective, and hence we can improve the patient safety elements as well. And these days we are creating more of silos, like we are evolving into multi-speciality hospitals. Actually, our care should be organized our medical conditions and also the care cycles. It's not about the speciality that matters, it is about the care cycles that matters. Because the current care silos are actually fracturing the medical conditions, and the more such fragments that patient undergoes, there are chances of errors occurring in each segments and safety elements are getting compromised. So this we need to take care. And information, communication, and education is very important, and we need to pay attention to this. The other one is a value-based system wherein we have to create value at each and every point of time, and the value is for the patient. See, as an organization, success is about creating revenue, and it is about operating surplus. For the physician, it may be increase in number of patients and his revenue and his practice. But for the patient, it is not. It is his own good health outcomes, not more hospital visits, not increased cost. So creating value for the patient is the only ethical goal that we all have at this point of time. And I think it is always there. To do this, what we need to do is that we need to measure our results, the outcomes and cost for each care cycle. That is what we need to do. And when it comes to numbers, physicians might take up the responsibility and role and leadership to show the way. Because when we talk about numbers, some of our staff members may view this as a threat. And this perception can definitely affect the performance. So when we say that these numbers can make a real difference and this can push us to achieve excellence, and this is where we can actually make a difference, this kind of exercise has to happen, like results has to be measured in terms of outcomes and also the cost factor. And the other thing is that we need to keep our staff motivated, because that is where we can actually gravitate towards excellence. And to sum up, service delivery is the greatest competitive advantage that we have. And to have this as an effective competitive advantage, we need to have a clear vision, mission, and this has to be converted into a very comprehensible implementation program. And the organization should always have the ability to have the learning and relearning from the past experience. Business people are always crazy about the 10Cs, 7S, everything. So Hong Kong emergency physicians have come up with the 10Cs. See, these are the values that we are all striving for, to sum it up all. Thank you very much. And remember, service delivery is the only thing that can make a real difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vidya. I have this question which I would want all on the expert panel to comment on. We see an ever-changing scenario now, from acceptance to questioning amongst our patients. So do you think that pricing is a critical factor for the dissatisfaction? How would you address that? And the second thing is, how important do you think it is that we should have a sophisticated ambience compared to more practical surrounds for the modern patient?
I think more than just the surroundings, it is the attitude of the staff and the doctors there. You may go to a 5-star hotel with a very nice ambience, but if the attitude of the staff is bad, if they're not welcoming you with a smile, then you don't like it. I mean, you would never go to that hotel again. Whereas you can go to a small tiffin house where they will say, "Vanakkam, come," and then you are very happy. Food is good, the ambience is not great, but still, you know, you are happy. So I think we should focus more on the humane approach and having a very nice, welcoming attitude of staff. And also, you know, we want to address all the problems, try to resolve problems of patients, and that will help, rather than, you know, having a very posh kind of an ambience. Of course, that does help. Posh ambience, you can charge more.
Yours is one of the poshest.
No, you can charge more, but then more than having a, see, it's like, you can find the difference. You go to a Taj, the attitude of the staff is different from the other 5-star hotel. So finally, it's the attitude of the staff which will probably bring in patients rather than just the ambience. The ambience is there. If you have a better ambience, you can charge more because of the ambience. But then staff attitude also is important.
I think what Chitra meant was, all this is given.
Yeah.
Good staff, good behavior, everything is given. But besides that, in today's world, I think ambience also plays a big role.
Yes.
I mean, ambience, surroundings, I mean, everything, every aspect of practice has to be looked at. And what you said is absolutely right. You know, I mean, you can go to all the 5 stars, but Taj is Taj, wherever it is.
Yes, Dr. Ajay?
Yeah, I think yes, ambience, good, bad, or whatever, but that's attitude. That's what is what makes it. I mean, are you ready to listen? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the most of the patients, you know, dissatisfied with the doctor or the staff, or they didn't listen to me. So this is something, as long as we keep quiet, listen to them, and then start communicating, that's where, I mean, the ambience and everything will come.
Okay. Thank you very much, expert panel, for being with us. And I would be happy if you stay on, because we have great leadership talks by great leaders coming on. Look at me selling my next program to all of you.
No lunch break.